What it do, bitch? What's up, everybody? So I just took this test right before now. So it took me like about 2.5 fucking hours to get through it. I thought I was recording it all, and at the end, when I clicked stop, my screen capture thing is weird. Like, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. When it doesn't work, it doesn't give you any clues as to it not working, and you don't know until you're done recording the thing, and then you go, oh, it got like 0.7 seconds of that recording. And that's what just happened to me. I took this quiz, this I Side With 2016 election political quiz, got all my answers, all the percentages on how much I agree with the different candidates. I did super duper long detailed commentary for all you lovely people out there, and it didn't fucking capture it. So now I'm taking it again. So I've already been through all this, and I've already explained myself in detail for all the questions, and we're right back to square one, because that's how we roll, apparently. So I wanted to do this because the election's coming up very soon, and now this clearly can't take everything into account. Basically what this does is it takes their platform / their stated position on the different issues, and it compares, your issues with them, and it tells you exactly how much you agree with them. It can't take into account, corruption probably is one thing it can't take into account, flip-flops, things of that nature. But you still do get a basic sense, a general sense of how much you agree with the different candidates. So I wanted to take this for you, and since it's me, obviously there will be roughly 312 different side rants. This quiz is super detailed. So it looks like it's just, like 3 options here? No, because other stances is a thing for almost all of them. You get to put how much you agree or how much you care about, each given issue. So I'm going to try to get into as much detail as possible. We'll see exactly how much I agree with Jill Stein, Gary Johnson, Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump. And yeah, so it should be fun, even though I already did this once for you and you are unable to hear it. So without further ado, as I take a sip of my coffee. All right, let's get started. Should terminally ill patients... Oh, is this the beginning? Yeah, this is the beginning. That's weird. That question was not at the beginning before. Should terminally ill patients be allowed to end their lives via assisted suicide? Yes, no, but they should be allowed to refuse artificial life support. Yes, but only after psychological examination to show they fully understand this choice. Yes, but only if there was no chance they will survive the illness. Yeah, that's what terminal means, dipshit. Okay. I like how right off the bat, this is a tough one. Here's why this one's actually really interesting. I'm stuck between the super duper uber libertarian position of, yeah, you should be allowed to take your own life for any reason whatsoever. Like, that's your body, your choice, your freedom. It's all you. I'm stuck between that position and a position that's similar to my position on drugs, for example, where I say it should be legalized, taxed, and regulated. In this case, you're talking, should it be legalized and regulated? So in other words, should there be rules to when you can do physician-assisted suicide? Should it only be when you're terminally ill? Should it be when you're terminally ill or if you have super severe depression? Should it be allowed, but there are age limits? If you're 8 years old, should you be allowed to tell your mom, look, I want to die, and then, they just take you to the euthanasia store or whatever the fuck. So this is one where I'm 50-50. I don't know if I'm just in favor of it in any and all circumstances, and it's your right, so you should be able to take your own life because it is what it is, or if I'm in favor of, it should be allowed, but it should be allowed with rules and regulations and a process to try to, incentivize the person to try every possible avenue to fix whatever it is before they do the ultimate thing of taking their own life. So I don't know. I'm 50-50 on this. I've always been, but I'll just go with, yes, they should be allowed to end their lives if they're terminally ill. See, terminally is in the question, and I'll put that it's somewhat important. All right, what's your stance on abortion? Pro-choice, pro-life, pro-choice, but providing... Oh, hold on. Did this thing... Oh, that's great. They saved my answers. Oh, that's fucking awesome. So now I could just describe it. What is your stance on abortion? I put pro-choice, but providing birth control sex education, and more social services will help reduce the number of abortions. I put that all the later stuff here is factual. That's just factual. Like, we know that happens, as a result of if you have liberal policies in place. That's my take on it. But I'm somewhat moderate on the issue of abortion, because there's a line where it gets iffy and questionable. Like 23 weeks is when, okay, now you're at viability. And at 23 weeks, you're talking about a fetus that can feel pain. So for the first 23 weeks, it's all the woman's choice. I don't want to hear anything about anything from the state, from people who disagree, yada, yada. After 23 weeks, I agree with Roe versus Wade in that there should be, you can allow the individual states to regulate abortion after 23 weeks. So my take on it is after 23 weeks, only for rape or incest, or if the life of the mother is in danger, or if there's a fatal defect in the fetus and the fetus won't make it anyway, then you can get an abortion after 23 weeks. So I'm somewhat moderate on it. I actually prefer Hillary Clinton, believe it or not, on this to Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders gives the standard, like, oh, pro-choice, I'm pro-choice, and it's always a woman's choice, and that's the end of the conversation. And yeah, I agree, up to 23 weeks. And then after that, it's fair to regulate, because you're talking about a totally different scenario than when it was a gamete or a zygote or a pre-gestation fetus. To me, the game changer is when the nervous system is developed, so you know that the fetus feels pain. Then I get it. Then I understand the, some rules and regulations in place. So I'm a little moderate on that, but that's what I went with there. Do you support legalization of same-sex marriage? Yes, absolutely. Next question. Simple enough. Yeah, it's a no-brainer. Come on. Should health insurance providers be required to offer free birth control? I put yes, because the wording of the question is a little weird. See how it says, should health insurance providers be required to offer free birth control? It's weird that the word free is in there, because if you're talking about health insurance providers, well, I got news for you. You're paying into your health insurance. You pay your health insurance. So you pay it, and you just want to get back services. One of those services should be birth control. So the phrasing of the question is a little weird, because basically what it should say is, should health insurance providers be required to offer birth control instead of the word free? They put the word free in there. I don't know why. It kind of is weird for the question, but yeah, they should provide it like any other thing. So that's why I put yes for that. Do you support the death penalty? No, too many people are innocently convicted. Yeah, my whole thing on that is I'm not with a lot of other liberals who are to the left of me on it, and they say, no, man, look, even if we know for sure, like philosophically and theoretically, you shouldn't even like it. No, in theory and philosophically, I'm totally fine with the death penalty. There are some people who are beyond rehabilitation. There are some people who commit the most heinous crimes imaginable. Osama bin Laden existed. Adolf Hitler existed. We've covered stories of somebody who raped toddlers and disemboweled them and flushed their intestines down the toilet. So there are some people who I'm not sympathetic for them. I'm just not. I have no sympathy for them whatsoever. So in theory, fuck them. I don't care. You're eliminating a problem if you get rid of them. But the only reason why I draw the line and say I can't have the death penalty in practice is because we always get innocent people. You're never going to get all the right people. So I can't have a system in place that sometimes kills the wrong people. So that's why I'm against it. Should the government support a separation of church and state by removing references to God on money? Yes. That's not the most important, separation of church and state issue. That's more symbolic than anything else. But yeah, there shouldn't be "in God we trust" on money. Not everybody in the country trusts in God, and this country's not a fucking theocracy, so get it the fuck off of there. And by the way, it was only added during the Cold War when we were against the godless Soviet Union. That's why we added it, and that's when we added it. A lot of people think, oh no, it's been there from the founding. No, it hasn't. So there's a lot of people who don't even understand, the facts on that. If you hear me taking sips of my coffee, I apologize. I didn't plan to have to do this while taking sips of my coffee, but the previous 2 hours and 30 minutes of me doing this wasn't recorded, which is a goddamn national tragedy. Okay, more. Should a business be able to deny service to a customer if the request conflicts with the owner's religious beliefs? No. Now, here's why not. You have a history of that being the dodge for all types of bigotry and discrimination. So back in the day when it was officially segregation in the South, they didn't say, oh, hey, by the way, we're racist pricks, and that's why we're doing this. They didn't say that. What they said is, no, see, this is the natural order of things, and this is how it's supposed to be, and this is what it says in the Bible, and that's why we got to separate the races. I'm not kidding. They had reasoning that was along those lines. It wasn't just like, oh, we're racist assholes. They said, no, the Bible says you got to separate the tribes. And so they say, okay, blacks and whites got to be separate. So if somebody came in, they say, look, I'm not going to serve you, and it is because it's my religion. They wouldn't lay it out and say it's because you're a N-I-G-G-E-R. So it was used for that then. Today, what's it used for? Gay people. Well, look, oh yeah, sure, okay, so we have gay marriage, but, well, you can't tell a private business owner who they can and cannot serve or can and cannot hire. Sure we can. If you're in rural Mississippi and a gay person's car breaks down and they go to the local gas station, the only place within hundreds of miles that can help them, is it fair for that person to say, you know, you look kind of effeminate, I don't want to help you, we don't serve your kind around here. So you're going to turn away that guy, turn away his business, all because of the arbitrary thing of what his sexuality might be. No, nonsense. We're going to have anti-discrimination protection so that those people don't have to go through that indignity, and we're going to treat people equally. Look, if somebody comes into your store and they're knocking over shelves and shit, yeah, you could kick them out. You can kick them out based on their actions, based on what they've done. Of course, it's your business, you could do that, no question. But should you be allowed to kick somebody out? Hey, you have freckles, I don't like you, get out. Hey, you don't have the color hair I like, get out. No, hey, you're gay, get out. Hey, you're black, get out. No, of course not. And with these types of things in the law, it makes it so that you can fire somebody for being gay. You know, you can kick them out of your store if they're gay. I mean, we have now civil rights protections at the federal level for black people and for, gender. But we don't have it for the LGBT community, so we should have it for them too. They should just be added on to the anti-discrimination protections. All right, next. Should women be allowed to wear a niqab or face veil to civic ceremonies? All right, so for this one, I went yes, but their identity must be privately verified by a female staff member. A civic ceremony, by the way, is when it's basically like a government marriage. Like, I guess when you go to whatever the government building is to, like, approve your marriage. So it's not like when you're in the church or when you're in the mosque and you go through the religious ceremony aspect of it. It's, I guess, when the government approves of it and is the government ceremony. And they're asking, should women be allowed to wear their basically Islamic dress in there? Now, as a general rule, I'm against all kinds of conservative, fundamentalist religious garb. I am, because I don't believe in conservatism. I don't believe in religion. I don't believe in fundamentalist religion. I think it's all bullshit. So I'm against it, and yes, those kinds of, that kind of attire has been used for suppression, of course. Would I flat out ban it at a government ceremony, though, or a civic ceremony, I should say, and, when they come in and say, well, I'm not going to let you wear that? Well, no, I wouldn't do that. You can be against something and say, I'm going to argue against it without forcing via law that people bend to your will, effectively. So, yeah, if they choose to wear it, and I know there's open questions about just how much somebody chooses to wear these things. Certainly in many countries where it's forced that women wear it, it's not a choice, and I would get rid of those forced laws in those countries. But we don't have forced, veiling laws in this country. So if people choose to wear it and it's the civic ceremony, yeah, I wouldn't ban it. But I guess the whole thing about verifying the identity is just to make sure that, you get it's the right person and there's not some, like, trickery or fuckery going on behind the scenes. Should states be allowed to display the Confederate flag on government property? No. Operative words there, government property. If it was private property, you can fly whatever the fuck you want to fly, man. I don't care. It's your property. You could fly a fucking Nazi flag for all I care. I'm against the Nazi flag. I'm against Nazis. I think you're a terrible, terrible human being and a raging anti-Semite, and your moral compass is beyond broken, and you're a monster. But yeah, you can fly the Nazi flag, you can fly the Confederate flag on your private property. It's only an issue when it's government property. Government property is funded by tax dollars. All the citizens are paying taxes. You got a lot of black people paying taxes. You're going to have black people pay taxes, and then that government flies the symbol of their fucking oppression and enslavement. Blow me. How about that? So, government should not be able to display the Confederate flag. All right, next. Should businesses be required to have women on their board of directors? I added my own stance here because the other ones weren't enough. It was, I put no, but they should willingly have women on the board. See, it's a tough, that word required threw me off, man. Because if you require women to be on the board, that means you have like a gender quota. I don't like quotas. Because, look, sometimes things are not always 50-50. Sometimes 50% women don't want to be on the board. Or you live in a small town and you can't, get enough to fill a position, yada, yada. There's a million things that could come into play. So, as a general rule, should you care about being inclusive and diverse? Yeah, don't be a dick. Be a good person. So you should willingly have women on the board, but no, I'm not going to force you by law. All right, should the government continue to fund Planned Parenthood? Yes. That's, pretty self-explanatory. Planned Parenthood does a lot of great things. It's necessary. And by the way, if you're anti-abortion specifically, you should really say yes to that. Because, Planned Parenthood, free clinics, family planning, all that stuff cuts the number of abortions massively. There's a contradiction in right-wing ideology there. You won't be surprised to find that out because they're full of contradictions. All right, should the military allow women to serve in combat roles? I said yes, as long as they can pass the same physical tests as men. So it's a similar thing with the other question. Yeah, I'm not in favor of like a weird sort of quota. We need 50% men, 50% women. I'm not in favor of like lowering the standards for women. No, just allow them in as long as they pass the same physical tests as men. That's it. Simple. Should gender identity be added to anti-discrimination laws? Yes, and I think what they're referring to there is like trans people. So should somebody who's trans like be allowed to be fired simply because they're trans? Should you be able to kick them out of your place of business simply because they're trans? No. So it should be added to anti-discrimination laws, just like gay people, and they're still not part of anti-discrimination laws. I think it's over 20 states, 22 states, last time I checked, which was admittedly a few months ago, but 22 states have no protection for the LGBT community in terms of anti-discrimination protection. Okay, now, should gay couples have the same adoption rights as straight couples? I said, sure, why not, as long as they pass the same background checks as straight couples. Simple. Should marital rape be classified and punished as severely as non-marital rape? I put yes for that, and I thought it was a weird question. That's a really weird question. Because, okay, so the idea is rape. Non-consensual sex. You come home from work, hey, honey, I'm horny, let's fuck. No, I'm tired. I went to the store. I had to deal with all this bullshit today. I don't feel well, yada, yada. And then what are you going to do? Pin your fucking wife down and fuck her against her will? No, that is rape. Of course that should be treated just like it is rape, because it is. Oh, you know her, so it's different? You've had consensual sex before, so it's different? No, if it's non-consensual, it's not okay. Don't fuck people without their consent. A public service announcement from SecularTalk. All right, where do you side on environmental issues? Did I miss one? I feel like I may have missed one. No, I didn't. Okay. Should the U.S. expand offshore oil drilling? No, and provide more incentives for alternative energy production. That's pretty self-explanatory. Should the government give tax credits and subsidies to the wind power industry? I said, yes, the government should support more sustainable energy technologies. By the way, I get it that, like, wind is one of the worst ones of the renewable technology. Like, I've heard that as well, and I've read about that. But I'm in favor of any and all attempts to get off of fossil fuels by any means necessary. And, like, even with... So, nuclear is, like, my second least favorite for obvious reasons. There's massive downsides. I mean, it's by and large, it's actually fine, but... When there's a downside, it's a massive downside. Fukushima, Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, or 5 Mile Island, or whatever the fuck it's called. So there are downsides to nuclear, but even that, like, if you want to do that temporarily to get moved towards all renewable technology and green technology, by all means. So, yeah, definitely have the government invest in green technology, renewable technology, and they're not doing it more so now because the fucking oil industry owns the Republican Party, and they've bought the government. So that's why we're not getting as far down that road as we should. Do you support the use of hydraulic fracking to extract oil and natural gas resources? No, we should pursue more sustainable energy resources instead. Of course, fracking, you have the infamous problems of the water supplies being tainted as a result of it, basically being poisonous and toxic. A lot of carcinogenic chemicals are in the fracking fluid. You have earthquakes that increase as a result of it. There's all these problems with it. So no, just move towards renewable, sustainable energy resources instead. Okay, should the government increase environmental regulations to prevent climate change? Yes, and provide more incentives for alternative energy is what I went with there. You could see I put kind of more important by the environmental ones because it's pretty important. I agree with Bernie Sanders when he says, let's treat climate change like a World War II level threat. If you follow the science on it and you read the stories, he says that because it's accurate, because it's true. We need to treat it like that. So unsurprisingly, Bernie Sanders is right about something. Breaking news. All right, where do you side on economic issues? Should the government subsidize farmers? I put yes, but only as a temporary measure to stabilize prices. So the history of that is a little weird. During the Great Depression, the government started subsidizing farmers out of necessity. And I don't know just how much we're still doing it. To the extent we still do it, I'm fairly sure they're just doing it with giant corporate farms and they're fucking over smaller farms. So, I'm sure there's corruption that goes into it just like anything else in the government. So that's massive downside, but I do get the idea, okay, well, we have to subsidize it every now and then for price stability reasons. Again, it happened during the Great Depression. It can certainly happen again, especially with climate change and all these issues happening now. So, should they subsidize it? Yes, but just to stabilize the prices. As a general rule, I don't like corporate welfare. And I don't like, the government funding private businesses. I think that's generally a terrible idea. Should the government raise the federal minimum wage? Yes, and make it a living wage. That, to me, I put most important because it's a fucking scandal that we still live in a country where you can work full-time and not make enough money to survive. I mean, think about that. You can work full-time and not make enough money to survive. Okay, on that alone, there's an argument that the whole system is fucked and it's bullshit. Like, the whole point of having a system is so that it benefits the people and it deals with the needs of the people. We have a system where you could work full-time and not make enough to survive. Okay, at that point, the system is not existing for the benefit of the people. It's like the people are just trying to fit into the system. They're trying to be just a cog in the wheel or spoke in the wheel, whatever the fucking phrase is, of the system. So, no, but that system is not self-validating. It only should exist insofar as it meets the needs of the people. And if people can't even make a living wage when they work full-time, we need reform to get that to be the case. Because that's just totally and utterly unacceptable. All right, should pension plans for federal, state, and local government workers be transitioned into privately managed accounts? No, because that's privatization. And I clicked here, no, privately managed accounts will jeopardize the financial security of senior citizens, because it will. Imagine for a second, George W. Bush got through his plan to privatize Social Security. What would have happened? In 2008, it all would have exploded. It all would have went away. Poof, gone. Because you take it from a guaranteed earned benefit system, so you pay in, you get out. Guaranteed earned benefit system, and you switch it to the private marketplace, they invest it. Naturally, Wall Street is not going to make only safe investments. They're going to do casino capitalist bets. And as any gambler knows, you bet long enough, eventually it's going to blow up. So you might show some big returns at first, and they would pretend like, oh, see, this system is better because you just had a higher return on the money you put in. But then eventually, it would all go away. Poof, it'd all be gone in the next recession or the next depression, the next downturn. So, no, it's a horrible fucking idea, and it's an idea brought to you by Wall Street because they want your money. Should the government use economic stimulus to aid the country during times of recession? Yes. Yes. That's standard Keynesian Economics 101, MMT, the New School 101. I get it, by the way. Like, I'm more on team, okay, yeah, we should do economic stimulus, but I would cut in other areas. I'd cut in the military, I'd cut in pork barrel spending, I'd cut in corporate welfare, and I'd raise taxes on the rich. So I would find ways to, not just spend out of thin air, but basically pay for it in various ways. But yes, generally speaking, when there's a downturn, the government needs to be the spender of last resort to get the economy going. Should the U.S. raise or lower the tax rate for corporations? They should raise it for obvious reasons. We have the second lowest effective tax rate. corporate tax rate is in the U.S. Second lowest in the modern world. So all this talk, oh, we have the highest one in the world. Actually, no, we don't. When they say that, they're talking about the nominal rate, which is what the rate is on paper, which nobody fucking pays. The effective rate is the one you have to look at. That's what people actually pay after all the loopholes and all the deductions and all the nonsense. So raise that. Should the government make cuts to public spending in order to reduce the national debt? No, reduce military spending instead, I went with, because over 50% of discretionary spending is military spending. So, yeah, bitch, that kind of speaks for itself. We have a bigger military. Excuse me, hold on one sec. Still drinking my coffee. We have a bigger military than, what is it? The next 9, 10, 11 nations combined, and most of them are our allies. So, we could cut U.S. military spending by 50% and still have the biggest military in the world by a landslide. So this isn't a question, and it really annoys me how ignorant many people are on this issue. I feel like if the American people knew the facts on how much we spend on the military, they would go, oh shit, we really should cut there. But they don't know the facts, so when there's fear-mongering about ISIS or whatever, you can easily get the American people to say, we need to increase military spending, because they don't know the current levels of spending. We just covered the story on the show the other day. There was a $1.5 trillion new generation F-35 jet, and they need $500 million more, they say, to finish it. So you need $2 trillion to finish a fighter jet, which, by the way, I'm sure the previous generation worked just fine. So you need that money, but we can't get fucking clean water in Flint. Blow me. How about that? So that's... God, that annoys me. Okay, anyway. Would you favor an increased sales tax in order to reduce property taxes? I put no because sales tax is more of a regressive tax because it affects middle-income people and low-income people more. Property tax affects higher-income people more. So, if you swap that, you're hurting the middle class and the poor people more than the people with more money. Do you believe labor unions hurt or help the economy? I say they help, but we need to ban their ability to make political donations because I'd ban everybody's ability to make a political donation because I want to do clean elections and public financing of the entire election. So, generally speaking, they help. But, by the way, I also get that there are some downsides to labor unions. I mean, we all know the stories of, hey, my uncle was in the union and his buddy, he would just sit on his ass all day and get paid no matter what, and yada, yada. So, I get it. There are some downsides. But overall, when you have strong unions, you have a strong middle class. And when you have a strong middle class, the health of your nation is much better. Should employers be required to pay men and women the same salary for the same job? I added my own stance here. I support equal pay for equal work in caps because I'm a teenager. No, the options they had here were a little weird. None of them said that. I support equal pay for equal work. The way the question is worded is weird because it says, should employers be required to pay men and women the same salary for the, quote, same job? So notice it's like a sleight of hand move. I'm not saying they did this on purpose, but this is how it came out. Same salary for the, quote, same job. Well, what do you mean? Hold on. Is the productivity the same? Is it actually equal work? Or are they just doing the same job? Because there's a difference there. So the example I give on this one is... I know I'm a nerd and I like golf, but bear with me. So Tiger Woods was number one golfer in the world for a zillion fucking years. And think about what he did when he was the best golfer in the world. He was hitting drives over 300 yards. He won 14 majors. He won a total of, I think it's 79 golf tournaments. When he won his major, sometimes he blew out the field by 15 strokes, which is absolutely unheard of in golf. That's not a thing. That doesn't happen. It's amazing. The guy was just on another level. So Tiger Woods made over $1 billion through all the different ways he made money, through the prizes of the golf tournaments, through the deals he made with Nike and equipment and all that shit, advertiser money, yada, yada. So according to the way this question is worded, the number one female golfer in the world should make the same amount of money as Tiger Woods because they're doing the same job. They're both golfers, and they're both number one in the world. But hold on now. That makes no sense. Why does that make no sense? Because, well, the number one female golfer in the world didn't win 14 majors. Maybe she won like 3, but that's a lot less than 14. She's not hitting drives over 300 yards. She's not selling out every single tournament she goes to. When she wins, she's not winning by 15 strokes. So it's not the same productivity. It's not equal work. So they have the same job, but they're not doing equal work. So I can't just give her $1 billion. You see what I'm saying? So I support equal pay for equal work in the sense that if you do equal work, yeah, you get equal. So if she won 14 majors, if she was hitting those drives as far as she was selling out as much as he's selling out, if all the things were equal, then yeah, equal pay for equal work. But it's not equal work. She didn't do equal work. So that's why I added my own stance here, because I personally support equal pay for equal work, but I don't like the idea of just, well, same job, so just give them equal money. Well, no, it depends. Is it equal productivity? If it is, then okay. If not, then no. So it's a little more nuanced than I think the title, allows for, which is why I added my own stance there. Do you support the Trans-Pacific Partnership? No, of course not. Outsources U.S. jobs. We make a deal with Brunei, who has Sharia law, and we give them a pat on the back. Malaysia, quote, tolerates slavery. They're in the deal. We don't care. We're not trying to put pressure on them to stop with fucking slavery. We're doing it because our corporations, we're doing it because our corporations want it. And it's going to further drive U.S. wages down, further kick jobs out of the U.S. You're going to lose your jobs. So, no, totally against it. Should the government increase the tax rate on profits earned from the sale of stocks, bonds, and real estate? Yes. So basically what they're talking about there is the capital gains tax. So Mitt Romney, for example, he earned, say, $15 million, or I think it was one year he earned like 15, one year he earned like 30 million. But so he pays like 15% on that money. Now he pays such a low rate because he makes all of his money through his investments. And you get a lower rate if that's, where you're earning your money from. I don't agree with that. I think that it should be, if you're going to have somebody who's a construction worker who makes $80,000 a year pay 30% in taxes or 25% in taxes, you're going to have a secretary who makes $65,000 a year pay 20% in taxes. You're going to tell me you're okay with Mitt Romney making $30 million and only paying 15%, so he's going to pay a lower rate than somebody who actually busts their ass for a living? Romney's sitting on his Mormon ass all day and making all that money and paying a lower rate. That makes no sense. It's because the system is biased in favor of the rich, because they bought these loopholes, they bought these special deals, they bought these special tax rates. So, yeah, no, it should be taxed the same. Whatever your income is, if you make your primary income through investments, whatever amount you happen to make, it should be the same as if you had earned it in income. So it should be the same as the income tax. So, for example, if Mitt Romney made $15 million because he actually worked as a CEO somewhere, he would get taxed at the top marginal rate of 39%. So it should be the same for if he earned that money via investment, and that's his main job, 39%, top marginal rate. So, and by the way, for the record, I would raise that marginal rate as well. Anyway, so should welfare recipients be tested for drugs? I put no because if you're gonna, the reason why they would drug test welfare recipients is because they take government money. Well, a lot of people take government money, so why would you single out welfare recipients? That makes no sense. If you want to, be consistent, if you want to say, hey, let's drug test people who take welfare or who take government money. Well, politicians, batter up. You guys all want to be drug tested? You take government money. So you should be drug tested. Hey, military-industrial complex, batter up. Hey, people on Wall Street who fucking tank the economy. What, none of you are on coke? I mean, it was a big thing in the 80s. The whole thing was people on Wall Street doing cocaine, left and right, off hookers' asses. You name it. We all saw Wolf of Wall Street. So, and that actually was, there was I know, like my friend's dad worked on Wall Street. He was there around the time. He said it was fucking nuts. It was crazy. Everybody was coked up. So if you're going to start drug testing people because they take government money, well, why would you only single out welfare people? You would need to do everybody who got a bailout, everybody who took a government check for any reason, anything. But they would never do that because a lot of the government money goes to rich corporations and billionaires, and so they wouldn't do that. But they're singling out welfare people. Why? Because they're the poorest and they have the least power. And honestly, let's face it, in the minds of a lot of these people, they just think, oh, black people. When they hear welfare, they think, well, black people. Well, should we test welfare recipients? In Alabama and Mississippi, they're probably thinking, well, yeah, it's only black people who take that, right? Yeah, drug test the black people. So, no, it's a horrible idea. It's a stupid idea. Don't do it. But if you're going to do it, be consistent and drug test everybody taking government money. And let's start with the the banksters on Wall Street. Should businesses be required to provide paid leave for full-time employees during the birth of a child or sick family member? I put yes, but the federal government should sponsor the program instead of businesses, because a lot of smaller businesses simply can't afford that. Like, they literally don't have the money, and that would put them out of business. But also, my stance is even a little more nuanced than that. Like, I would have like a graduated system where, so if your business has between like 1 and 20 or 30 employees, the government should pick up the whole tab for that, for the, the paid leave for maternity reasons or sick family member or whatever. If your business has between 30 and 100 employees, I do a 50-50 deal where the business picks up 50% of the tab, the government picks up 50% of the tab. If your business has over 100 people, I would have the business pays it all, because if you have over 100 people, at that point you're a big business and you're dealing with big numbers that are rolling in, so you can probably handle the paying for maternity leave, even paternity leave, sick family members, paid vacation time. That's another one. I would do paid vacation time by law. So I'm a little more nuanced than what this answer gives off, but that's more or less where I fall. Should the Federal Reserve Bank be audited by Congress? I put yes, we deserve to know who the bank gives money to, but everybody should know that it's a little more complicated. That auditing the Fed thing is a little more complicated than it appears, because if you're auditing the Fed and there's you're given control over to Congress, it gets squirrely because there's a lot of idiots in Congress who don't know anything about monetary policy, don't know anything about economics, and you don't want Congress controlling fiscal policy. You don't want them, because as terrible and fucking, secretive the Fed is, to have Congress control it, I mean, like, think of the idiots in Congress now. It's majority Republican. It's, people like Paul Ryan. He thinks he's smart. His ideas are ridiculous. So yeah, you should audit it and figure out exactly what's going on here, but understand that if you were to audit it, there are going to be massive downsides to that. There's a lot that would create uncertainty in the marketplace. That would certainly lead to some short-term losses. And the idea of having Congress more or less control the Fed, that's you don't want to go down that road, man. I mean, you could really start going Banana Republic territory if you let that bunch of idiots control everything. But that being said, it was like, don't get me wrong, the Fed itself is also a little creepy and weird. If I'm not mistaken, it's like a sort of a mix of private and public, and I don't know. I honestly don't know enough about that one to give a really fleshed out opinion here, but I lean towards thinking, well, yeah, they should audit it, but I understand. I'm reserved about it. That's why I put less. It's less important, because I have reservations about that could end very badly, and I'm well aware of it. Okay, should U.S. citizens be allowed to save or invest their money in offshore bank accounts? I put no. Too many wealthy citizens are abusing loopholes in offshore banking laws to evade taxes. Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing with that, right? It's not like your aunt who's a barista. I'd really like to send my money to the Cayman Islands. That doesn't happen. You're talking about, mega rich CEOs, and they're doing it specifically to avoid paying their fair share of taxes. Should the government bail out Puerto Rico? This one I thought about for a while. I went with no. Now, I feel bad because Puerto Rico, according to all the articles I read, got fucked over massively by Wall Street. They came in and said, we're going to be the saviors, we're going to help you out, and then they fucked them. So I feel horrible for Puerto Rico, but at the same time, dude, again, I go back to the same point over and over. We don't even have clean water in Flint, Michigan, and we're just going to start handing out money to Puerto Rico? I mean, where does it end? You want to give it to Burundi? You want to give it to Bangladesh? You want to give it to Madagascar? I mean, pump your brakes. Pump your brakes. Get some clean water in Flint. Okay? Let's upgrade our infrastructure. Right now it gets a grade of D. Not acceptable. We got to spend that money here. We got to make America great again, but not in his way, because he's a moron. So yeah, I'm going to have to pass on bailing you out, Puerto Rico, although I feel for you, and I understand Wall Street fucked you. Should the government require businesses to pay salaried employees making up to $46,000 a year time and a half for overtime hours. All right, so this is another one where I said yes, and the government should do more to protect workers' rights. In reality, I think I'd even be a little more aggressive on that. I think that the whole idea of time and a half and overtime, that should apply to most people, man. That's especially since people don't even make a living wage now. Like, what are you going to do? Not pay them a living wage and then tell them, like, no, I'm not going to pay you time and a half and overtime either. Like, what? What is going on here? So, yeah, just workers get fucked over in general. So, yeah, I'm generally in favor of these kinds of moves to mandate by law that there's some sort of fair system and fair pay. Should the current estate tax rate be decreased? I said, no, increase it. Estate tax, by the way, only applies to, like, less than 1% of the population. Literally people with estates. And, they're still going to be rich. So I don't feel bad for them. You're taxing dead rich people, mega rich people, and it's not like their kids are going to be left out to dry. They're still going to get millions of dollars. They're still going to get millions, but you shouldn't be able to inherit enough money to just coast for like 8 generations, which happens sometimes. It happens. People, their parents get so rich and then they just inherit it and then they fucking, they don't have to do anything their entire life, and yeah, it can go on for generations and generations. And what's funny is that conservatives should be on our side with this one, too, because they are all big on the incentive thing. Like, oh, you can't get welfare, you got to incentivize people to work. Well, then why don't you think that way when it comes to, Paris Hilton? Why don't you think that way when it comes to Donald Trump, who was fucking born with a silver spoon in his mouth? And then he went on to bankrupt 6 different companies and lose $914 million in the year 1994 alone. Like, don't you want to have inheritance rules? And the best people to tax in a system are dead rich people. It's better than taxing the alive rich people. It's better than taxing anybody else. Dead rich people. So yeah, I'd increase the estate tax. It would make a lot of sense. Okay, should the government prevent mega mergers of corporations that could potentially control a large percentage of market share within its industry? I said yes, and the reason is very simple. You need competition. So sorry, I know I keep drinking in mid-sentence. You need competition. This is why we have antitrust laws. So antitrust laws, kick in when there's no longer fair play and fair competition. So what happens is a business might take over, too much of a given market. And then inevitably, every time, without fail, what will happen is prices go up, quality goes down. Prices go up, quality goes down. So what you need to do is if they have too much of the marketplace, you got to break it up and incentivize competition, because when there's more competition in most areas, or in a lot of areas, I should say, you're going to have the quality go up and the cost go down. So it's basically to protect the consumer. Malware needs to be updated. Let me X that out. So it's basically to protect the consumer. That's the whole idea. So mega mergers should be avoided because it creates a disastrous situation for the consumer. If somebody has a lockdown on a marketplace, a monopoly makes it an absolute mess. So yes, I would say you should break them up. Which is why, what is it, the AT&T, who is it, AT&T Comcast? No. Fuck, I'm blanking on the other one. AT&T and somebody, there's a big mega merger they're talking about. Disaster. They should definitely block that. Oh, fuck me. Have I not been showing more questions this entire time? Well, wait, let me actually take note of where I was before. I was right by domestic policy issues. Oh, I think I've been going through them. Okay. Oh, no. Oh, no. It stopped saving it. Oh, I guess just the rest of these will stop saving. All right. Well, it looks like I got to answer some. Should there be fewer or more restrictions on current welfare benefits? Oh, I didn't answer this one on purpose because I don't know what the current restrictions are. So it would be ridiculous for me to answer that since I don't know. Should pension payments be increased for retired government workers? Oh, I didn't know the answer to that one either. Because I don't know what the current the payments are in the pension system. So how the fuck should I know? Should an in-state sales tax apply? I left that one blank because I just didn't even get it. Listen, look at this question. What a silly question. Should an in-state sales tax apply to online purchases of in-state buyers from out-of-state sellers? Huh? Blow me. That's my answer. All right, where do you side on domestic policy issues? Do you support the Patriot Act? No. Of course I don't support the Patriot Act. For obvious reasons. It basically takes a shit on our Constitution. Your Fourth Amendment protection from unreasonable search and seizure is gone. NSA is taking everybody's information, storing it in a giant facility in Utah. You have no more, Eighth Amendment. You have no more habeas corpus, due process, no more Eighth Amendment protection from cruel and unusual punishment. The government does indefinite detention. The Patriot Act was one of the worst pieces of legislation ever. I mean, it's that bad. So no, of course I don't support it. Do you support affirmative action programs? I basically dodged the question and put, regardless, we should create more social programs to address poverty. And my whole thing on affirmative action is I'm split on it, and I can explain why. So, on this, the part of me that says, yeah, you should have it, the argument for that is you're being ridiculous if you try to deny the massive, gigantic, systemic or systematic bias against people of color. So we had slavery for such a long time. Then we had Jim Crow and segregation. And it was only in the fucking mid-1960s that even on paper it said, okay, you know what? Blacks and whites are equal. So, but once you put it on paper, it's not like they woke up the next day and every, racist white man in Alabama and Mississippi and in the Deep South went, you know what? Now I love me some black people. That's what it is. It's not like they just allowed them the same kind of access to jobs and the same access to power within society. There was still massive, a massive crackdown, and blacks were basically treated as second-class citizens. And then with the drug war and how that's disproportionately targeted against them. And to me, the biggest fact on this is the inherited net worth fact. So the average black family in America inherits about $11,000. That's their net worth. The average white family, about $140,000. Now, the explanation for that is clear. It's because all you have to do is go back one generation, and black people are officially second-class citizens. There are people still alive today that grew up under segregation. So they were basically held down. That was the design of the system. And then as a result, we still haven't gotten to a point where they've caught up. $11,000 versus $140,000. It's not just that, the blacks don't work hard enough. That's not it. That's not a sufficient explanation. I don't think that's true. So since that's the case, and there's this massive bias against them, and we had a 100-yard dash as a society, and white people ran 80 yards and then turned around and said black people could start, it's not a crazy idea to say, well, you know what, maybe there should be some things in society where if there's an open question, and hey, a black person was 2 points down on a test to a white person, just give it to a black person. I mean, come on, how long have we fucked them? So I don't think that's a crazy, notion. But then on the other hand, the argument goes, yeah, but hold on now. That white person who you're saying got 2 points better but doesn't get the job or whatever it is, it's not like that guy owned slaves. It's not like that guy was pro-segregation. It's not like that guy is racist. So you're flipping the discrimination, but you're making this new version of discrimination just a much more mild form of discrimination. But at the end of the day, it's still discrimination. So, and I think what happens is a lot of white people, well-meaning white people, who are not racist, they look at something like affirmative action and it gets them really mad. Because they think I didn't do it. We didn't do it. What are you talking about? No, it wasn't me. So why am I being punished for this? And, it's not unreasonable to be for it from the African American perspective. It's not unreasonable to be against it from the white perspective. Because, again, it's like this idea of, now it's like collective punishment, and the ancestors of the white people who were more guilty are now getting punished for it. But, so I don't know. It's a messy issue. It's a messy topic. You can see how it's not a crazy idea to be for it, but then also it's not a crazy idea to be against it because they didn't do it. The people who were, experiencing it today, the white people, it's like, well, they didn't do anything wrong, so why, what's going on here? And it's not a crazy idea. The idea of a meritocracy, hey, man, just give the job to the most qualified person. That's not a crazy idea. That's an idea that makes sense. Give it, hey, this person did the best. Okay, give him the job. I mean, the idea that somebody could try to spin that and say, well, maybe that's racist. No. Even accounting for and acknowledging all the factors that have been weighed against the black community and people of color in general, it's still an acceptable position to say the person who gets does the best should get the position. So I don't know. I was massively torn on affirmative action, but I just dodged it and said, regardless, we should create more social programs to address poverty. Okay, next. Should there be more restrictions on the current process of purchasing a gun? I put yes. You guys know me. I support the basics. At the federal level, do a universal background check. No exceptions on that one. Do a ban on high-capacity magazines. Do ban on assault weapons. Do some sort of, giant gun buyback program. Not to, force people to give up their guns, but just to have, okay, if you want to get rid of the old ones, it's good to get rid of a lot of them in circulation that are unnecessary. So I'm for the basics at the federal level, but I'm actually somewhat moderate on this issue too, because I get it that if you live in Alabama or Mississippi, or if you're in upstate New York and it's more rural, it's a different lifestyle, man. It's not the same as the suburbs. It's not the same as the city, and you actually need a gun in many of those circumstances. I mean, if you're going hiking somewhere, and you're in the mountains and there's fucking bears up there, I mean, you should have a fucking gun. Not only am I saying I should allow you to have it, I'm saying you literally should have it to protect yourself. So there's a different lifestyle thing going on between rural and city life, and that should be accommodated for. So at the federal level, I do the basic regulations, and then I leave it up to the states to get more specific, and even leave it up to like the city and, localities and whatnot. Are you in favor of decriminalizing drug use? I clicked yes and retroactively reduce sentences for those already serving time, but you guys know me, I'd even go further. I would legalize, tax, and regulate drugs. Should corporations and unions, super PACs, be allowed to donate to political candidates? No, and I put that as the most important because I would get money out of politics. That's the number one issue that affects every other issue, because the government is not having a debate of competing philosophies. What they're doing is they're having a debate of dueling donors. Hey, I want to, represent the people I sold out to. No, I want to represent the people I sold out to. And that's what goes on, and that's why Congress has like a 9% approval rating, and the American people fucking hate them, because they're all corrupt. They're all corrupt. I guess there are some exceptions where people who have principles, Ron Paul, famously, lobbyists wouldn't even go to his office because he told them to fuck off. Bernie Sanders, same thing. Lobbyists hate that guy. So there are a few exceptions. They're not all bad, but like over 90% of them are bad. Okay, should there be term limits set for Congress members? I don't know, and I'm really mixed on term limits, because like the whole idea of them is to limit corruption, but it doesn't do that. So, it's because you can have term limits but still have a campaign finance system that's corrupt, where corporations and billionaires give money to the candidates, and then when those candidates get in office, even if it's for a limited time, they're going to represent those corporations and billionaires. So the idea of it is to limit corruption, but it doesn't limit corruption. But that being said, I'm also not just totally against term limits. I understand them. I mean, I kind of like the idea that the president has a term limit. I don't know why I like it, but I do. But, for Congress, I don't know, because then what are you going to do? You're going to get rid of, Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders was there since roughly 1836, and he's been fighting for the people every second of every day. So would I want an arbitrary term limit to get him out of there when the people want him and he's got an 89% approval rating in his state, and just set some arbitrary limit like, no, you can't, spend more than 2 terms or whatever? I don't know. I mean, I kind of like the term limits for the president, but I don't like it for Congress. So, I guess no for Congress, but I could be open to be swayed by different arguments on that one. So, should the redrawing of congressional districts be controlled by an independent, nonpartisan committee? I put yes. That's basically just an anti-gerrymandering idea. Gerrymandering is a massive problem. Democrats and Republicans should oppose it because, look, we're in states where Democrats are in control, they're going to gerrymander in their favor. In states where Republicans are in control, they're going to gerrymander in their favor. Nobody should be doing that. Excuse me. Should internet service providers be allowed to speed up access to popular websites? So this is the net neutrality idea. At the expense of slowing down access to less popular websites. I put no, treat all traffic equally and continue the openness of the internet. So in other words, my position is full net neutrality. The opposite would be horrific. I mean, if you allow the internet service providers to slow it up and, speed it up, and for certain people, what you're going to do is set up a system where the internet service providers just basically tell everybody, hey, pay me your bribe or else I'm going to slow you down. And that massively biases the internet in favor of big corporations and against small businesses that can't afford it. Can't afford to pay the bribe. So there shouldn't be a bribe. They shouldn't control it. It should be, open. The internet should be open and traffic should be treated equally. I mean, it's a no-brainer because you're not really creating internet fast lanes. What you're doing is creating slow lanes. You're just going to slow down the internet for your competition. Should the U.S. government grant immunity to Edward Snowden? I said yes, and instead investigate the CIA and NSA directors. Fuck yeah. Everybody, in the Bush administration too, the people who did torture, all that stuff. I mean, Edward Snowden, the criminal, are you kidding me? He's the hero. He's the guy who said, hey, American people, your government is doing things that are massively unconstitutional and illegal, and you need to know about it. So, no, definitely let him go, 100%. Should the NSA be allowed to collect basic metadata of citizens' phone calls, such as numbers, timestamps, and call durations? I said no, only with a warrant showing probable cause of criminal activity. Yeah, when it comes to these issues, man, it's very simple. Like, nobody says the government in any and all circumstances cannot do surveillance. No, we all understand. We have a constitution. It makes it perfectly clear. If you have a warrant describing the specific persons to be searched and things and reason why, well then fine. So as long as you get your fucking warrant, I have no issue with it. That's basic police work. But if you do it without the warrant, then you're a police state and you're tyrannical and you're taking away people's right to privacy and protection from unreasonable search and seizure. So that's a very simple kind of thing going on there. Should the government raise the retirement age for Social Security? I said no, eliminate the income cap on taxable earnings instead. So what that means is, very simply, there's a cap at about $120,000 a year for what you pay Social Security tax on. So if you're a doctor or a dentist and you made $120,000, you pay the same amount of money in taxes for Social Security as LeBron James, as some Wall Street CEO who made, $35 million, let's say. Think about that. Somebody who makes $120,000 is paying the same amount in Social Security tax as somebody who makes $35 million. So if you just raise that cap, you lift that cap, which again is at about $120,000, and you make the CEO pay the same percentage, not the same raw number, but the same percentage as the person making $120,000, well then Social Security is 100% fixed. I mean, right now, it's not even in that much trouble. It has a giant surplus, and I think the year is by 2037, it pays out, what was it? About 80% of its benefits? 78%? I don't know, something like that. So it's not really in trouble now, but if you do that one little fix, it's really not in trouble, and it's good as far as the eye can see. Okay, should victims of gun violence be allowed to sue firearms dealers and manufacturers? No, on this one, I agree with Bernie Sanders. No, because manufacturers and dealers should only be held liable for negligence. So, in other words, what they're saying is you have a gun shop, the gun shop sells a gun to somebody, that person passes a background check, they have no criminal history, no psychological issues or any of that. Now, 5 years later, that person snaps, they go on a shooting spree, and they kill a bunch of people. Should the gun shop owner be sued because that person did that? Well, no, right? I mean, how the fuck was he supposed to know? What, does he have a crystal ball? He legally sold a gun. The guy went through the background check. Everything was fine. And 5 years later, he snapped. That gun shop owner doesn't know. He's not liable for that. I mean, to me, that sounds a lot like, okay, Chevrolet sells a car to somebody. Everything's totally fine. Person's totally normal. 5 years later, that person runs over a crowd of people. Should Chevrolet be sued? They didn't fucking do anything. They just sold the car to the guy. What? It's not. They didn't know. How the fuck were they supposed to know? So they didn't do anything wrong. So no, I wouldn't allow them to sue in that instance. I mean, it should only be when there's negligence. So I agree with Bernie on that one. There was a big debate between Bernie and Hillary during that in the primary. Should Apple unlock the iPhones of suspected terrorists for the FBI? I put no, because then that means that the government can just tell any company to do anything for them, and, they have to do it, which means your information, your privacy is violated whenever the government feels like it. So they don't even need to have a good reason. They could just tell Apple, yeah, just unlock this. And, yes, sir. Well, no, that's a police state. You got to have a process. You got to have a system. You got to have warrants. You got to have, all that stuff. So, and the whole idea of having those phones lock is that it's impossible to get into them. So they would have had to invent all new technology to be able to do it. And once you invent that technology, the cat's out of the bag, and then it's available for anybody to use it for any reason, for nefarious reasons, for good reasons, and then you don't have any privacy anymore, and the whole concept is gone. So the answer to that one is no, and it's a much longer conversation to be had. Should the Senate hold hearings and a vote on President Obama's Supreme Court nominee? Yes, Merrick Garland is a centrist justice. He's somewhat conservative on criminal issues, which I don't like. That I'm not happy about that. But in other ways, like other social issues, he's somewhat liberal on economics and campaign finance. He's somewhat liberal. So he's like a centrist judge. But yeah, they should hold the hearing, regardless of if I like the guy or not. That's the fucking way the system works. Hold the fucking hearings and stop obstructing literally everybody for any reason or non-reason imaginable. And that's what they're doing. They just block them for no reason. And they even said, there was an article the other day that we covered on the show. They said, no, we might just literally block until the Supreme Court no longer exists. I'm not kidding. You guys think I'm kidding. We just covered the story. Like, yeah, just block forever. You're totally within your rights to just, let the Supreme Court go extinct and let them all die. What are you going to do? Okay, should local police increase surveillance and patrol of Muslim neighborhoods? I said no here, and I said no because of civil liberties. So, look at the way they phrase that. Should local police increase surveillance and patrol of, quote, Muslim neighborhoods? No, because they said, quote, Muslim neighborhoods. So in other words, all Muslims who live in a Muslim neighborhood, you have to suffer increased surveillance because some people in your community might be terrorists. Well, no. Do police work the way it's supposed to be done? You don't do broad fucking crackdowns on entire communities. You go and get your evidence, get your warrant, look after the specific people who are a problem. If you have evidence of a specific mosque radicalizing people, fuck yeah, get your warrants and go do your job, goddammit. But when you say, quote, Muslim neighborhoods, that's dumb. So, for example, I live near, I'm in New York, and there's an ultra-Orthodox Jewish community near me. Now, one of the things that they do, it's a common practice, is they have the circumcision rituals where they cut off the tip of the baby dick and then suck the bloody baby dick. What? That's fucking nuts, right? We all look at that like, what are you doing? So would it be a fair thing for police to say, should local police increase surveillance and patrol of Jewish neighborhoods? No, because it's not all Jews doing that. There are some ultra-Orthodox Jews, some fundamentalist Jews who do that. So for them, if they're committing a crime, well, yeah, find out exactly who's doing it, go through the process, get the warrant, be specific in who you're searching, and do it. But if you just say Jew neighborhoods, Jewish communities, well, no, that's too broad, and you're generalizing, and yes, that is bigotry. Okay, I mean, that is, what else do you want to call it? Like when Trump says, we need a total and complete shutdown of Muslims coming to the U.S., okay, well then you are saying I am going to crack down on all of them because some are ISIS and Al-Qaeda and terrorists. Now this is where they go, well, I didn't say all. But your policy applies to all. You are saying total and complete shutdown. So yeah, that is bigoted. Absolutely. And your policy cracks down on all. So even though you do your little tap dance and say, I didn't say all, your policy cracks down on all of them, so that's not okay. 1.6 billion of them, just because ISIS and Al-Qaeda exist, doesn't mean you crack down on all of them. By the way, this game can be cut in a million different directions. So, okay, over 60% of mass shootings are done by white males. Should we have a crackdown on, quote, white neighborhoods to make sure they don't happen again? When a white male walks into a mall, should they have to go through extra surveillance because they do over 60% of the mass shootings? Fuck off. Fuck off. That's just lazy thinking. That's ridiculous. Because it's also true, even though most of the mass shooters are white males, most white males are not mass shooters. You see that? Both things could be true. Even though most religious terrorism nowadays is done by Muslims, most Muslims are not religious terrorists. So both of the things could be true, but people always want to disregard the happier fact of those, which is that most are good people. You know, you could say the same thing. Okay, well, you got gang violence in the inner city. Okay, well, most of the gang violence in the inner city is done by black males. But most black males are not doing gang violence. So why does everybody ignore the latter part of that? That's why profiling makes no sense. It's fucking sloppy thinking. It's not taking into account that latter fact. So, okay. I think you know where I stand on that. All right, show more questions here. Should people on the no-fly list... Oh, okay, I didn't answer this one, and I'll tell you why. Should people on the no-fly list be banned from purchasing guns and ammunition? So, the no-fly list could be total and utter bullshit. And that's why I didn't answer it, because the no-fly list is a secret government list. If I'm not mistaken, it was created under the Bush administration, and there's a chance they just slap on names to that list of people who they think / don't really know are bad people, or even people who maybe just have Muslim-sounding names, and they go guilty enough. So if the list is complete and utter bullshit, well then no, they shouldn't have any of their rights taken away for just like, they should be treated like any other citizen, because they are any other citizen. Because if the list is bullshit, they didn't do anything. Now, on the other hand, there's a chance the list isn't bullshit, and basically the people on the list fall somewhere in this gray area of, we don't have enough evidence to convict you of a crime, but we have enough evidence to know that something fishy's going on, and we do need to keep that eye on you. You see what I'm saying? So if the list is not bullshit, and that's the case, well then I kind of support the idea of just being on the safe side and saying, you know what? You can't fly, you can't buy a gun. But if the list is utter bullshit, well then I don't support it, because then it's utter bullshit and you're unnecessarily cracking down on these poor people. And by the way, there's no process by which they can get their name off the list. They're just on it indefinitely. So it's too tough of a question, and we don't have enough facts about the list for me to make a decision on that one. Should the government be allowed to seize private property with a reasonable compensation for public or civic use? Yeah, this, I just knocked my microphone here. You guys still with me? This one I don't know the answer to either. Because, like, on the one hand, you get it. Okay, there are some projects that are so big and important that you just got to do it. Like, what are you going to... We got this highway, and we got to build it through this area. And, oh, well, look at that. There's a house there. Sorry. Like, you get it. But then on the other hand, really? I mean, individual rights are pretty important. The idea that the government could just tell you, that's nice. You're moving. Like, wait, what? That's insanity. I bought this place. This is my place. You can't just fucking unilaterally decide that. I have a choice here, do I not? So I don't know. That's a tough one, because I think you can imagine like fringe circumstances where it's like, well, come on, you got to do it. But then in a lot of other circumstances, you could see siding with the individual over the government and going, come on, man, you guys are just being onerous and unnecessary here. So I don't know. I just didn't answer that one. Healthcare issues. Do you support the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act? I put yes, but mandatory single-payer system would be better. I put that as most important because, for obvious reasons, the United States is the only modern nation that does not have a single-payer system. It is insanity because those systems have been proven to be better. The only reason we don't have those systems is because the unnecessary, for-profit, rapacious, shark, middleman health insurance companies are ripping us off, and they've bought the government. So they get to do whatever the fuck they want, and the people get screwed. Do you support the legalization of marijuana? I said yes, and immediately release anyone serving time solely for drug offenses. You guys know me. I'd go further. Legalize, tax, and regulate all drugs. Should the federal government increase funding on health care for low-income individuals? I said yes, but come on, single-payer system. Let's get to it. Boom, boom. Should the government regulate the prices of life-saving drugs? Yes, and we should socialize medicine and healthcare. Are you sensing a common theme here? Healthcare is one area where, to me, it's not even close. That's government all day long. I mean, that's like in the top 5 of things the government should be involved in. It's just too important to leave to for-profit. That's just too, you can't risk it. You want to talk about couches, you want to talk about TVs, you want to talk about video games, all day long. Private sector, man, I'm with you. But when it comes to healthcare, you can't have this for-profit model. You can't have the middleman insurance company, which makes more money by denying as much care as possible. I mean, what a perverse incentive that is. All right, where do you side on electoral issues. Should a photo ID be required? No, and automatically register every citizen to vote when they turn 18. I mean, this is something I think a lot of other countries do this, just automatic registration. They set up these extra levels and layers here to disincentivize people from voting, and it keeps turnout low, and when turnout is low, who does it help? The Republican. Should there be a limit to the amount of money a candidate can receive from a donor? Yes, and ban all political donations and publicly fund elections. Again, I put that as most important because it's the issue, which is the overarching issue of all issues. I mean, again, you got to stop and think about it. That's the cancer. That's the virus. The politicians represent the donors. They don't represent us. So if you ban the private donations, what happens? Well, if you have clean elections and everybody's funded by the people, you're going to have a system where they represent the people. Should the presidential debates include candidates with less than 15% of support in national polls? I said yes, and we should reform the electoral process to allow more polling and ballot access for third-party candidates. Yeah, I would have, there should be a threshold because there's a lot of goofballs who are like semi-running for president / not really and just making a joke of it. So there should be a threshold, but the threshold should not be 15%. 15% is way too high. Maybe around like 5% makes more sense. Should political candidates be required to release their recent tax returns to the public? Yeah, sure. I mean, transparency for top government officials, it should be total transparency for top government officials. Save, of course, I'm not saying they should be forced to show us their naked pictures. Of course not, but you know what I mean. There should be transparency as much as possible within the government because we hire them. So they work for us. So it's not the same as you're a private citizen and you have, your privacy. No. You chose this job and you work for us and we pay you and you're making decisions with our money in our name. Give me transparency. Save the obvious. Again, I don't want to see your naked pictures and no, we don't release the fucking nuclear codes. But outside of that, you know what I'm saying. Do you support Common Core national standards? Yes, I support the concept, but not the current implementation. Yeah, that's the thing. I've heard some goofy things about Common Core and some silly things that are taught. I don't know if it's true. I don't know how much of it is rumors or whatever, but the idea of federal standards is a no-brainer to me because the people in Alabama and Mississippi and Kentucky are going to get fucked and left behind if the states determine their curriculums because they're going to learn, hey, creationism is real, evolution is false, Jesus is awesome, Ronald Reagan was the best ever, man. Like, that's what they'll learn, and then people in California and New York are just going to run laps around them because they teach actual facts there. So you got to have federal standards, but I don't know if the current federal standards are standards I would agree with. So that's why I support the concept, but not the current implementation. Do you support increasing taxes for the rich in order to reduce interest rates for student loans? I said yes, and increase government funding so every student receives a free college education. That's another one of my top priorities is not only universal health care, getting money out of politics, but universal college as well. Foreign policy. Should the U.S. continue to support Israel? I did the massively anti-Semitic thing of saying we should give equal support to Israel and Palestine. I'm obviously being tongue-in-cheek, but you don't think there's some people out there who are going to say that's anti-Semitic? Wait for it. It'll happen. We just gave Israel $38 billion so they can continue occupation and apartheid and expanding their settlements as we wag our finger, oh, don't do that, and they do it. And we're like, anyway, here's more weapons and money. So we're supporting them, and they're doing horrific things, and we act like we're against it, and then we continue supporting them. So, yeah. I don't want to fund that shit. I would do carrots and sticks, man. Oh, really? That's what you're going to do? Well, then how about we cut off your funding and maybe we sanction you and maybe we lift our veto with the UN and say we're in favor of a Palestinian state. How you like them apples? I mean, that's what I would do with Israel, but of course, that's not what these presidents are doing or this government is doing. So I say, okay, give equal support to Israel and Palestine, and I would get them to the table and I would get a fucking deal. Should the U.S. remain in the United Nations? Yes, but the United Nations needs massive reform. I mean, for fuck's sake, man, Saudi Arabia leads the Human Rights Council. Saudi, all atheists are terrorists, Arabia. Saudi, women can't drive, Arabia. Saudi, let's behead people in the public square for drug smuggling and sorcery and witchcraft, Arabia. Insanity. You ruin all of your credibility when you have those guys on a human rights council. So, yes, we should remain in the UN, but massive reform, massive reform, because the way it works now is ridiculous, and they have no moral authority because a lot of the things they say and do are a joke. Should foreign terrorism suspects be given constitutional rights? Now, here's the thing on this one, man. The way our Constitution works, it's a restriction on government. So, since it's a restriction on government, like in the First Amendment when they say you have a right to free speech, right to free press, free protest, that means the government cannot restrict your speech or the press or your protest. So the same thing applies for due process and habeas corpus. It's not saying like, oh, you have a positive right if you're an American citizen to these things. It's saying the government cannot take away your right to a trial. So that would apply to citizen and non-citizen alike. Now, obviously, there are, differences like if you're literally at war, well, war is a different scenario and you're not going to be on the battlefield and right before you shoot somebody, you say, no, I must give you a trial. So there are exceptions, and that is the exception, time of war. But when it comes to, are you supposed to have some sort of process set up for political prisoners so you can't have them indefinitely? Well, that's a no-brainer, not just because of the Constitution, but also because of the Magna Carta, but also because of the Geneva Conventions and the Nuremberg Tribunals and all that stuff. International law, period. So terrorism suspects have human rights, and on that alone, you got to have a system where there's a fair trial. And yes, you can't have Guantanamo Bay, which is an extrajudicial prison, because then you just hold them indefinitely, and then you are violating international law and U.S. law. So yeah, you have to give them a fair trial and shut down Gitmo. Now the problem with that is, they set it up in a way that was so bad and so wrong that the people at Gitmo will probably be let off on procedural reasons alone because they were so fucked every step of the way procedurally. So Bush and Cheney fucked it up from the beginning when they decided they weren't going to do this the right way. But they made their bed and now we're all going to have to sleep in it. So even some people who might be guilty might get away. But the crazy thing is the overwhelming majority of people at Gitmo, at Abu Ghraib, they weren't guilty. We learned all this. The Bush government made a deal with Afghanistan and Pakistan warlords and also with the governments there, and said, okay, look, send us Al-Qaeda and jihadists because we just got attacked on 9/11. And then those governments and those warlords shipped whoever the fuck they wanted to the U.S. They weren't jihadists. They were just their enemies who they didn't like. So, turns out warlords, not that trustworthy. Pro tip. So, and that's what happened. And we ended up torturing people who were innocent. We did anal rape torture, anal feeding torture. You guys know. We went through the horror stories. Hypothermia torture, threw water on a guy, left him in a cold cage. He died the next morning. And that guy was totally innocent too, by the way. So, a horror story on top of horror story. Look, we got to set an example for the world, not act like terrorists ourselves. So, of course, you got to give them a fair trial and shut down Gitmo. It's not a question. All right, next. Should the military fly drones over foreign countries to gain intelligence and kill suspected terrorists? I said no, the military has no right to do so without a congressional declaration of war. Obama's bombed 7 countries. Okay, and all he's doing is tacking on all the new countries to the old declaration of war, which was used during the Bush era. So that's not okay. You need a separate declaration of war. And by the way, they also try to say it's not war. Like, oh, well, we just droned the shit out of people in Pakistan, but it's cool. We're not at war. Wait, what? So if China droned Kentucky, would you say, no, it's cool, that's not war? Of course you'd say it's war. So when you do it to Pakistan, it's no different. You're bombing 7 countries and pretending most of them you're not even at war with. But you are. That's an act of war. So just because you're not against the government and you're against, insurgents in the country, that doesn't mean anything. And by the way, you kill massive numbers of civilians. 90% of the people killed by drones are not the intended target. So, no, you shouldn't be allowed to do that unless there's a congressional declaration of war. And we don't have that, so you have to stop with the drone war. Okay. Should the U.S. continue surveillance of its allies? I said no, because they're your allies. That's like I get surveillance of your enemies, they're your enemies. But your allies, that's like saying, hey, should you spy on your best friend? Well, that's your best friend. While you're spying on them, why are you treating them like they're not your best friend? That's crazy. That's your friend. You want to ruin your trust and fucking do that? That's nuts. So, yeah, no, chill with the ally thing. Should the U.S. formally declare war on ISIS? No. We've been at war. We've been doing the, quote, war on terror since 2001. We started the war in Afghanistan in 01, the war in Iraq in 03. I mean, for fuck's sake, man, it's 2016. We've been at this for 15 years, and the problem has only gotten worse. There are more jihadists today than there were then. We made it worse. We made it worse. We made it worse. We killed civilians, and then when you kill civilians, you radicalize more people. ISIS came out of the ruins of Iraq because you toppled the strongman leader. All these problems, we've just made it worse every single time. And right now, ISIS is not a direct threat against the country. They're a horrific group. They're a brutal group. They need to be stopped. The Kurds are doing what they can. The Shia militias are doing what they can. And I'm fine with giving humanitarian support and aid to them in their fight. But they're not here. They ain't in Nebraska. So should we formally declare war against them? No. What do you want to do? Fucking fight this war forever? Okay. Do you support President Obama's move to lift the trade and travel embargo on Cuba? Absolutely. Because the embargo didn't work. The Castros only got more and more power when he did the embargo, so the exact opposite happened of what you wanted to happen. And guess what? Since Obama took this move on Cuba, now they legalize small businesses. So mission fucking accomplished, and the Republicans should be thanking Obama because he did exactly what they could only dream of. He made it so Cuba has legalized small businesses when they never did. They had total centralized power. Now, since the deal, they've legalized small businesses, and we're opening up lines of communication, and we're moving in a more positive direction. And there's no reason to continue that embargo. The embargo made no goddamn sense, and it didn't work. So Obama is 100% right about the Cuba move. So I'm with him on that completely. It's one of the best things he did, in my opinion, along with the Iran deal and some other things. Should the U.S. increase or decrease foreign aid spending? I put decrease because, again, we don't have clean water in Flint, Michigan. Our infrastructure gets a grade of D. We just wasted $2 trillion on a fucking fighter jet. The list goes on and how we waste our money and don't spend it on us. So how can I rationalize not having clean drinking water in a bunch of places around the U.S. while we send aid to other people? I mean, $38 billion to Israel. I think they have universal health care. We don't even have fucking universal health care. Why are we giving you money? You give us money. So I would decrease it. Should the U.S. accept refugees from Syria? I put, yes, accept refugees, but after vetting. So right now, we have a great vetting process. It's a very rigorous vetting process. We do biometric screening. We have all these different government agencies involved in it. It takes about a year before somebody gets approved. But look, I agree with it. I think we should have massive vetting, but yes, I would add in, I would accept refugees. It's the right thing to do. I mean, again, try to flip the script. If we had some sort of disaster here and we needed to flee, and what if all the countries rejected us because, I don't know, look, you're a white male and you guys do a lot of mass shootings in the U.S., so we're not going to accept you. I'd say, what the fuck, that's crazy, that's bigotry. You're going to blame me for some other fuckhead's acts? Same thing with these Syrian refugees. I mean, do the vetting to make sure everything's good, but then once everything's good, yeah, let them in, of course. I mean, and don't get me wrong, you could have limits, you could have numbers, you could have targets. But to just don't accept any I don't agree with that. I think that's fairly immoral to do that. Should the U.S. send ground troops into Syria to fight ISIS? No. Should the government increase or decrease military spending? I put decrease. Over 50% of discretionary spending goes to the military. The war in Iraq cost $7 trillion by 2053. I just told you about the story. $1.5 trillion already spent on the newest F-35. They need another $500 million now. It's crazy. I mean, it's fucking crazy. We spend more than the next 10 or so nations combined, and most of them are our allies on the military. Should every 18-year-old citizen be required to provide at least 1 year of military service? No, it should be a choice, not an obligation, because I'm a little bitch, and I want to do it. And I also don't agree with the wars we're fighting. So you want to force me to put on a uniform and then force me to go fight in wars I don't agree with? Fuck off. Should the U.S. conduct military strikes against North Korea? No. No, North Korea is an atrocious, monstrous, disgusting regime, but what are you going to do? You attack them, you don't know they don't have missiles somewhere else and that they can't launch against Seoul within 30 minutes. You don't know that. So you got to try diplomacy in every imaginable way. I mean, just go in and bomb everybody? Should the U.S. close the military prison at Guantanamo Bay? Yes, and it's unconstitutional to indefinitely hold suspected terrorists without a trial. Absolutely. We went over that in detail before. Should the military be allowed to use enhanced interrogation, that's torture, such as waterboarding to gain information? I put no, and we should strictly follow the laws of the Geneva Convention, and there are other ones here that were good too. No, torture is inhumane, unethical, and violates the Eighth Amendment. That's all true. No, torture is an ineffective form of interrogation. That's also correct. So, so let me go back with this one and move along. No, we should strictly follow the laws of the Geneva Convention. Should the U.S. provide military assistance to defend Ukraine from Russia? I put no, we should pursue diplomatic options instead. That's complicated. I don't want to, I will end up getting more into NATO and stuff, but yeah, I prefer diplomacy to, military assistance for Ukraine. Should the U.S. provide military aid to Saudi Arabia? No, during the conflict with Yemen. They're slaughtering civilians in Yemen right now. According to some counts, over 50% of the dead are civilians. They've attacked mosques, they've attacked hospitals, they've attacked schools. They're just going nuts. And they're using illegal munitions. They're using cluster bombs, which are illegal because they kill massive numbers of civilians. White phosphorus, which is illegal. So all this terrible stuff. Should the U.S. prevent Russia from conducting airstrikes in Syria? Russia shouldn't be doing airstrikes in Syria, but I don't know how the U.S. can prevent it, short of, starting a war with Russia? We could talk to them and try to convince them, but that ain't going to stop them. So, what do you mean prevent them? I didn't answer this one because the wording is so strange, and I don't know how we could prevent them from doing it. Should the U.S. defend other NATO countries that maintain low military defense budgets relative to their GDP? Okay, so, this is the controversial one, because in this one I'm kind of Trumpian. Trump said, maybe we should renegotiate NATO, and everybody went nuts. But the thing is, he's right about that. For those of you who don't know NATO, NATO promised, when the breakup of the Soviet Union happened, NATO promised, look, we're not going to move NATO any closer to your border. We understand your concerns. We're not going to do that. We don't want to be a threat to you. This is what they said to the Soviet Union when it was becoming Russia. Now, they went back on that, and they did that. So they said, we're not going to inch closer to your border, and then they started inching closer and closer to the Russian border. Now, from the Russian perspective, you talk to anybody there, what they'll tell you is, you guys are being the aggressors. You said you weren't going to move NATO towards our border. Now you're continuing to move NATO towards our border. So they view that as aggressive. By the way, this is the very same thing that the fucking Cuban Missile Crisis was about. JFK, when he saw that in Cuba, Russia had some arms systems, he thought, oh shit, imminent threat of attack. They have arms systems and they're in Cuba. Imminent threat of attack. So Vladimir Putin's response is the same response that JFK had. Vladimir Putin is looking at NATO inching closer to his border, and he's going, oh shit, they have arms there, imminent threat of attack. So it's funny how we have these double standards. When Russia put the weapons near us, oh my god, we lost our shit and we thought they're going to kill us. When we do it to them, we're unable to put ourselves in his shoes and go, well, maybe he thinks you're about to kill him. So there's an argument to be made, and I don't agree with every aspect of this argument. Let me be perfectly clear about that. But there's an argument to be made that Vladimir Putin is acting in a defensive way. Even with the crazy, I just jacked Crimea from Ukraine. That there's an argument to be made, well, it's more defensive because that was a client state of his. It was supposed to be a client state of his, and then there was a coup, and then it was a Western-aligned state, and that's right at his border, and he can't accept blah, 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 blah. But the question is, are you okay with sending men and women from Kentucky and South Dakota and, Florida to go fight and die to protect Estonia and Lithuania and the post-Soviet states? That's really the question here, and I don't know the answer to that. Now, again, people would respond and say, well, Kyle, if you let him just take these states, first of all, I don't want him to take the states. Let me be clear. I don't want that. But if he were to start taking those states, people would say, well, that's like Hitler. Hitler started taking one thing and then he just kept taking everything. So, and we didn't get in until much later on. So, there's an argument there, I guess, but not everybody's fucking Adolf Hitler, and Putin's nowhere near as bad as Adolf Hitler was, even though he's not a good guy by any stretch of the imagination. So, but then also you have the issue of, well, maybe the military alliances are the problem in the first place, which is why they should be renegotiated, because, I don't know, man, that's kind of what led to World War I, is you had this Archduke got assassinated, and then because everybody had a military treaty where somebody else had to come in if they fought, everybody in the world ended up fighting, and then there were millions of deaths. So maybe there's an argument to be made that these military treaties and alliances are a problem in and of themselves. But then there's also the counter-argument to be made that without them, you're at the whims of whoever the strongest state is at all times from just taking over everything. So I don't know. It's a very complex question. But all I do know for sure is I would do everything I possibly could diplomatically with negotiations to figure out how to resolve these different problems. Because right now the lines of communication are not open well enough, and Putin and Obama and NATO is too much of a standoff going on. So I would de-escalate that situation. Would I fucking send our military to fight and die in World War III to defend the post-Soviet states? I don't know. But that's why I say I'm kind of Trumpian on this one, because I would renegotiate NATO, because I think it's outdated and we need to, move in a new direction. Hold on 1 second, because my phone is making noises and I gotta shut it the fuck off. All right, I'm back. Blah, 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 blah. That was NATO. It's a difficult one, I know. I could talk for another hour about it, but I'm not going to. Where do you side on criminal issues? Should prisons ban the use of solitary confinement? Yes, because that's torture. Experts, neuroscientists, people are like, yeah, no, that's exactly what that is, so just know what you're doing. Like, okay, you want to be for it? Fine, but that's torture, so you're pro-torture. I, for one, am anti-torture, so I don't want that to happen. The justice system shouldn't only be for punishment. It should also be for attempts at rehabilitation when possible. So torturing juveniles especially, it's like, what are you doing? Should convicted felons have the right to vote? So I put yes, but only after completing their sentences and parole/probation. I actually don't like the last part of that, the parole probation part. I would say yes after completing their sentences, full stop. But I went back and forth on that one. So on the one hand, if it's called a right, well then it is a right, and you can never have it taken away from you. That's why it's a right. But then when it comes to voting, like, okay, there's a minimum age. You can't vote when you're 14. So, that 14-year-old, do they have their rights taken away from them? I don't know. I guess you could say that, or just say that those are the rules, but you get it eventually. And also, when you're in jail, like, you do have all of your rights taken away because you did something. So society says, well, look, you broke the social contract and you committed this crime, so you have a punishment, that you have to serve out this sentence and pay your debt to society. And when they're in there, they don't have, you don't have fucking free speech in prison. Like, you don't have any of that stuff. So it's when you get out that you get it back. So, I don't know. At first I was like, no, I'm against it. I don't think felons should have the right to vote because whatever, you committed a crime. So, yeah, it's fine to get that taken away. Then I went the other way, which was, well, no, it's a right. So a right is concrete. It can never be taken away. So even when you're in prison, yes, they should be allowed to vote. And then I finally settled in the middle, which is, when you're in there, no, you can have that right taken away, just like every other right of yours is taken away when you're in there because you're serving a debt to society. But I would do it when you get out, you get it back like that. Not even the parole probation thing. Right away, you get your rights back when you're out because you served your debt. So what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Do you permanently keep that away? No, I wouldn't do that. So there's like a middle ground there that I kind of agree with. Anyway. Should police officers be required to wear body cameras? Yes, this will protect the safety and rights of police officers and citizens. Totally agree. That one is kind of self-explanatory. I mean, studies show that even the fact that just when the cops know that they're being recorded and they have the camera on, there's many less instances of police abuse. So even though, like, sometimes you get it on camera and doesn't stop, the person sometimes doesn't get convicted, or there's all these problems that happen even when it's on camera. Up front, you nip problems in the bud because, again, the statistics show that they're much less likely to do abusive things just because they know they're being recorded. So that's a no-brainer. Should illegal immigrants have access to government-subsidized healthcare? Yeah, everybody should have access to government-subsidized healthcare because all healthcare should be government-subsidized. It should all be tax-funded. That's the whole point of a single-payer system. And what are we going to do? You're an undocumented immigrant and you're laying bloody in the street, and what am I going to say? No, leave him there. He's undocumented. I mean, what the fuck is this? Nazi Germany? No, he's not. He's bad. We got to leave him there. He's not one of the good ones. He's an undocumented immigrant. That's atrocious. So, yeah, everybody should have government-subsidized healthcare. So, of course, undocumented immigrants should. You can't just let people fucking bleed out and die because they're undocumented. That's a very extreme level of barbarity. Should Muslim immigrants be banned from entering the country until the government improves its ability to screen out potential terrorists? No, banning immigrants based on their religion is unconstitutional. We already kind of went over this. Should illegal immigrants be offered... This is just all a question solely from Trump. Keep out the 1.6 billion till we figure things out. Till we figure out what the hell is going on. Should illegal immigrants be offered in-state tuition? So for this one, I didn't answer it because, very simply, I would do an immigration deal where if you're here and you've been here for years and you're working and you're busting your ass and you have a family, I would give you amnesty. Now, if you're here and you're an undocumented immigrant and you're a criminal, I would deport you. Just like what Obama did and just like what the Democrats have proposed. So deport the undocumented immigrants who are here, who are caught, who are criminals or whatever. But the ones who are working hard and busting their ass and doing the right thing, yes, I'm going to give you amnesty, and I'm not going to be like the Democrats where they say, the process should take like 10 years. Fuck that. I'll give it to you now. You're an undocumented immigrant busting your ass, but you've been here forever. So what I would do is I'd make the deal. Probably most of the undocumented immigrants here would become citizens. I also, by the way, have no problem with border control. You can do border control. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. In fact, I like having a border because the old saying goes, you can have a welfare state and a border, or no welfare state and no border. Well, guess what? I like the welfare state, so I'm going to have a border. So I'm fine with doing border protection. I'm fine with deporting criminals. But everybody else who's most of the undocumented immigrants, most of the 11 million, yeah, they're going to stay, and I'm going to make them citizens, and I'm going to grant them amnesty. So that's what I do. So would I give illegal immigrants in-state tuition? Well, no, because most likely I would be making them legal. So that's why I just left that one blank. And then... Oh, these other ones here. I don't think I even saw these ones before. Should children of illegal immigrants be granted legal citizenship? That's in the Constitution. We have birthright citizenship in the U.S. So let's see what we got here. Yes, no, yes if they were born here. Well, that's the question, right? Yeah. Yes if they were born here. Yes, and abolish all national borders. Jesus. Yes, but it should not grant their parents citizenship. Yes, but only after performing 4 years of military service or graduating college. No, they must formally apply like every new citizen. No, all illegal immigrants should be deported. The answer is yes. That's in the Constitution. So unless you want to, somehow do a constitutional convention and get rid of birthright citizenship, you're not gonna be able to do that. Should immigrants be required to learn English? Yes, no, yes, but the government should provide... I missed these ones the last time I took the test, for the record. That's why I'm doing them now. Yes, no, yes, but the government should provide free language learning courses. Yes, and remove multilingual translations from government documents and services. No, but remove multilingual translations from government documents and services. No, we should embrace the diversity that immigrants add to our community. So on this one... The word required is throwing me off. Like, you should... What are you going to do? Fucking hold a gun at somebody and say, you got to learn it. Like, what? What do you mean? I mean, you should learn it, and it would be good for you to learn it, if not for anything else other than convenience. You're living in a country where the overwhelming majority of people only speak English. So you should learn it. It's a good thing for you to learn it. But would I require you? Well, I don't know. What's the punishment we're talking about? Well, am I going to throw you in jail if you don't learn English? Am I going to deport you if you don't learn English? That seems a little questionable, and it can get kind of squirrely there. So, I don't know. Let's add our own stance here. You should learn English. but it shouldn't be required. I don't know, mandatory? Let's go with that. It shouldn't be mandatory. And that's because I don't know what the fucking punishment should be. And let's make it less important. Let's make it least important because it's just weird. Should the U.S. increase restrictions on its current border security policy? What are the current restrictions? I probably didn't answer this one on purpose. Yeah, I don't know, because I don't know what the current restrictions are on the border policy. Increase restrictions on the current border security policy. Yeah, I don't know, because I don't know what the rules are as they are right now. Anyway, science issue. Should the government fund space travel? Yes, I said yes because Lilith from SecularTalk swayed me. If you asked me 2 or 3 years ago, I would have said no. I would have said, no, we shouldn't fund fucking space travel. And I would have used the same reasoning I used on foreign aid spending, why I would decrease that. Because we got shit we got to take care of here at home. 76% of people live paycheck to paycheck. 50% live at or close to poverty. Oh my God, come on, man. We got to spend on the right things. So what do you fucking pay for adventurism in space? Don't be ridiculous. Well, it turns out Lilith, got through to me and said, hey, jackass, that's not the whole point. The entire fucking point is that you fund space travel and all the unintended upsides of it are why you're really doing it. I mean, sure, you get to plant a flag in the moon, or now we're trying to get to Mars, or whatever the case is, which is cool. But in the process of getting humans to go to Mars or the moon or just be in space, you have to do so much problem solving, and it's such a technological effort that you can end up creating the next internet. You can end up creating the next giant medical breakthrough. You can create all these things, all because of the technology that comes about when you're trying to get to space and dotting the I's and crossing the T's. I think that's a phrase, right? So yeah, I'm in favor of it because the upsides of it, you can't even imagine how big the upsides are, because all this new technology is going to be used in practical things down the road to help everybody. Should the federal government require children to be vaccinated for preventable diseases? Okay, so here's the deal on this one. Vaccines are correct. Vaccines are right. Vaccines save lives. None of the conspiracies on vaccines are true. They're all bullshit, and it's not even close. So vaccines save lives, full stop. Now, that is true, and it is also true that you need herd vaccination to actually have them be effective. But it's also true that I understand the knee-jerk reaction in the other direction when people say, look, man, the government mandating that they put a needle in my arm and pump shit into my body, that doesn't end well. Why? Because the government has done the Tuskegee experiments, the government is not trustworthy, the government is corrupt, and all these fucking terrible things where you can understand people saying, I don't want a mandatory thing pumped into my body, because in the future you have some unscrupulous government that, they're up to no good, they're doing nefarious stuff. Of course they could, use that in the wrong direction. They could say, oh, look, we have a right to put shit in your body. What? I mean, that's crazy, right? So both of those things are true, and I understand, the concern. So I'm 100% pro-vaccine, and get your vaccines, again with this malware thing. Don't be a dumbass, get your vaccines. Don't be a dumbass, get your vaccines. Don't be a dumbass, get your vaccines. Okay, I'm going to say it a million times. But I do get the fear of, do you really want a government big enough that they could just force you to just put shit in your body like that? So the question is, should they be required to vaccinate kids? I said yes, but only for deadly contagious diseases. But I get it, that it's a weird issue because both extremes are right in the sense that vaccines are 100% the right thing to do. We know they save lives. But then it's also true that there's something unsettling about having a government just allowed to put anything in your body and that's it. Oh yeah, we just put anything in there and it is what it is. So even when they're doing the right thing with vaccines, you're afraid that maybe in the future they might do the wrong thing. I mean, didn't something like this happen with how they were trying to get Bin Laden, like they used the vaccine program to, I don't know, some weird shit went down where it was like, we're just untrustworthy. They pretended like they were doing vaccines and doing humanitarian work, but they were just trying to get Bin Laden, and yeah, I don't know. Something like that went down. But anyway, so that's my take on that. I put yes, but for only deadly contagious diseases, but it's actually a very difficult issue to dive into. Should producers be required to label genetically engineered foods? I said yes, consumers have a right to know what's in their food, but I need to add this caveat because it's really important that everybody knows this. There's nothing wrong with GMOs. There's just as big of a scientific consensus on GMOs as there is of a scientific consensus on climate change. Now, I know a lot of liberals are like, that's not true. No, it is true. It is true. We've covered the story. I did the story. I went through the list of, what was it, 6 or 7 different, respected scientific bodies at the international level, at the national level, that looked, we did a peer review study, looked at all the different things, peer review meta-analysis, looked at all the different studies, and we found out very simply, almost everything is genetically modified, and there aren't downsides. So you're wrong if you're in the GMOs are going to kill us all camp. That's just not the case. That doesn't mean Monsanto is good, by the way. They're not, and they've done a lot of fucked up things. But the idea of GMOs, most of your food is genetically modified. You can you can genetically modify food so that it's drought resistant, for example. This stuff is really important. So GMOs are fine, but yeah, I would label them just because there's no reason to hide it. I mean, consumers do have a right to know what's in their food and what it is. So yeah, I wouldn't hide it. I would just let everybody know. Here, we got nothing to hide. Here, this is GMO. Watch me eat a GMO apple and I'll be totally fine. So that's the deal on that one. Do you support the use of nuclear energy? Yes, temporarily while we increase investment into cleaner renewable alternatives. Nuclear is like the worst of the ones that aren't as bad as fossil fuel. For obvious reasons. Fukushima, 5 Mile Island or 3 Mile Island. I don't know why I never get the exact number correct. Chernobyl. So, yeah, I mean, you could do it, and it's mostly good, but yeah, sometimes some bad shit happens, and when it goes bad, it goes really bad. So I would try to get away from it, but fine for temporarily. Will you be voting? Yes, and it's most. Show my results. All right, here we go, baby. Evan McMullen is a bitch. All right, come on, give it to me. Where you at? 98% or 99% with Jill Stein? 99. Wowzers. Jill, you're wrong about 1% of stuff. That probably surprises people. 87% Hillary. Look, here's the deal on that one. This can't take into account the Clinton Foundation, corruption, the vote for the war in Iraq, the Patriot Act, supporting NAFTA, deregulation, TPP, yada yada. So, like, it doesn't take into account a lot of flip-flops and a lot of corruption. So, but even if you knock 50% off of my agreement with Hillary Clinton, she's still better than Donald Trump down here at 25%. And you know how I say, I agree with libertarians about half, 50%. Well, there you have it. Gary Johnson, 50%. I think they're mostly right on foreign policy and social issues, just like it says right here. So I'm with them on that one. But there you have it, man. Jill Stein, 99% agreement. Ain't that something? So if you guys are wondering how I would do my ranked voting, if there was ranked voting, this is probably how I do it. There's an outside chance I do Jill and then Gary and then Hillary because of all the other downsides of Hillary with being a massively corrupt insider. But Gary's also for TPP, by the way, so he's pretty disastrous in that respect. But yeah, this is it right here. For Hillary Clinton, even when you account for all the shittiness, she's still better than Trump. Because, think about it. Supreme Court, not even close. Hillary Clinton is by far and away better. When it comes to climate change, not even close. Hillary Clinton is by far and away better. Even granting all of her gross centrism and spreading fracking as Secretary of State, when it comes to regulation, Hillary Clinton is better. She doesn't want to eliminate the FDA and the EPA. He does. When it comes to tax policy, she's better. Worst case scenario, she leaves Obama's tax rates as is. Trump will definitely do the Bush tax cuts 2.0 on steroids. And remember, if Trump wins, that means the House and the Senate is still Republican, and they will pass that stuff in a heartbeat because they all agree on cutting taxes for the rich. So even with all of Hillary's downsides, and I agree 87%, this means basically with her platform, like what she says she's in favor of today. But even if you cut that in half, I still have much more agreement with her than I do with Donald Trump. So again, maybe, I don't know, if I did rank voting, maybe I'd do Jill, Gary, Hill, Donald, but I'd probably do Jill, Hill, Gary, Donald. But yeah, man, that's it. And for everybody wondering how I'm voting, I will be voting for Jill Stein, but I'll add the caveat that I'm only voting for Jill Stein because I'm in New York. And since I'm in New York, that means it is one of the absolute safest states. There's no question it's going to go to Hillary Clinton. It's the same with California, no question. Hawaii, no question. He's definitely going to go Hillary Clinton. Just like Mississippi and Alabama, definitely going to go Donald Trump. So since my state is super safe, I do my, basically your protest vote. I know Jill's not going to win. I know it's going to be Hillary or Donald. But look, I'll just tell you guys, if I was in a swing state, yeah, I would suck it up and vote for Hillary Clinton, even though I'd hate myself for doing it because of her Iraq War vote and the Patriot Act and the corruption and all that stuff. But I do think she is the lesser evil still over Donald Trump. So in a swing state, I'd vote for Hill. And since I'm in New York, I'll be voting for Jill. And now you guys know, and you got a really in-depth analysis of what I think on the issues. So, love you, baby. I'll see everybody on Monday. Peace.